All right, so going even beyond just closing the southern border, which is so important, a recent poll shows that 66% of Americans actually support deporting illegals who have already come into the country. Only 26% oppose it. So let's talk about this. Joining us now is Matt Whitaker, former Acting U.S. Attorney General, co-chair of the AFPI Law and Justice Center. Matt, welcome back to the show. I just find it interesting that this poll shows, you know, we've had whatever we've had. I don't even know what the number is, 5 million, 6 million illegals under Biden. People are worried about that, and they're now looking at deportation. And the issue is also how many terrorists are in the country. In fact, Matt, let me play something that former President Trump just said, I think up in New Hampshire or Iowa in the last 72 hours. Take a listen.
And we're going to have to deport. We're going to have a deportation level that we haven't seen in this country for a long time, since Dwight Eisenhower, actually.
There you go, since Dwight Eisenhower, actually. First of all, as a former Attorney General, Matt, how would this work? Can you just think through it? I know I don't need a 10-point plan, but just generally speaking, how would this work?
Yeah. Well, I think there would be two components to it, Larry. I think, first of all, you would have to immediately implement the migrant protection protocols, otherwise known as Remain in Mexico, to get the asylum system back working where only legitimate asylum claims are filed, because those folks have to wait for their hearing outside of the United States. And then on those that are here unlawfully or illegally, I think you're going to have to prioritize, obviously, the violent criminals, terrorists, the folks that are already in jail and have committed crimes for removal. But, you know, you're going to have to use the secure border to then roll people off, especially with ICE, to major cities and help remove the people that shouldn't be here and should have never come in the first place. But you also, the other thing on that plan would have to be in these sanctuary cities and really push back on these cities that don't allow ICE officers to do operations, otherwise remove these folks that shouldn't be here in the first place.
Matt Whitaker, the president refers to the Eisenhower plan. I think that was the Braceras plan. I could be wrong about that. But he had a general or a couple of generals who were organizing the return of some of the Mexican illegals who got in the 1950s. And Ike was pretty tough on that. Ike, of course, a former great general himself. How might that work today on Updated? I don't know whether you've ever talked to President Trump about it or not.
So in that video you showed from Des Moines on Monday, I was there with him on the stage. Yep. And, this is something that I've spent a lot of time not only talking to President Trump, but others about as to how to do this. But I think you're going to have to ultimately dedicate resources, Larry. And in the federal government, there are limited resources. But I think DHS and ICE need to be plussed up. And we need more ICE lawyers. And because the problems in our immigration courts, which are run by the Department of Justice, are that there's not enough judges, but there's really not enough ICE lawyers. And so there's going to have to be some funding happen. But, there's also got to be a political will, Larry. You know that nothing happens in the federal government unless somebody is driving that effort. And so you're going to have to put somebody that can lead and make sure that others follow in, removing folks that are not here lawfully and legally.
Much as I support this, at least conceptually, Matt Whitaker, it might not be so easy to find them. This incredible thing, 5, 6, 7 million, I don't even know what the right number is. But all these Biden illegal immigrants released, right? It's been a catch and release plan ever since Biden was inaugurated. And they're running through the entire interior of the country. That's why it's such an unpopular issue. Yeah. And all these sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. But how hard would it be to identify them in order to bring them back? We could bring them back peacefully, we could do it in some safe way, but how hard would it be to identify them, Matt Whitaker?
Well, it would be hard on the one hand, because obviously, you just can't just look at somebody and presume their status. But, they're all going to have papers. They're all going to have A-files at DHS and at ICE, and they're all going to have been registered at the border when they were caught and then ultimately released. I think so many of that number are people that have filed bogus asylum claims. And I think there needs to be more teeth. If you file a asylum claim knowing you're not eligible, there needs to be some consequence for that. And I think, again, putting in the Remain in Mexico policy and making all those folks that were allowed to wait here in the United States for 6 and sometimes up to 8 or 9 years, I think they all need to go back to their home countries or at least some other safe third country and then wait for their day in court.
All right, got it. Former Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Thank you, Matt.